Hello friends, today we will be making a Gouda or Gouda cheese with an interesting twist. We'll be infusing it with tea. Now this may seem strange to you, but I have it on good authority that this cheese is wonderful. When I heard about this tea, I reached out to the cheesemaker and asked him if I could video his creation, and he agreed. You'll find out where he's from and meet him a little later in this video. So come on into my kitchen. Let me show you how to make Gouda cheese with Rooibos tea. First things first, before you start the cook, take 1 cup of water and heat it to a boil. I'm using a pure Rooibos red tea, and I put a link in the description box if you'd like to take a closer look at it. Take 10 bags of the tea and drop them into the boiling water and let them steep for up to an hour. The goal here is to create the most concentrated cup of tea that we can so that we can infuse it into the milk. We'll see you in about an hour. If you're wondering where the kitchen kitty is, she's right here. Hello, YumYum. Once the tea bags have steeped for an hour, go ahead and squeeze each tea bag so we can get the maximum flavor out of the tea. And save off the tea bags because we're going to need them later. Pour 3.5 gallons of pasteurized, unhomogenized whole milk into your cooking pot. This recipe is testing the limits of my cooking pot, and I think that Christian knows what I know, that it takes the same amount of time to make a cheese with 2 gallons of milk, 3 gallons of milk, 3.5 gallons of milk, so it's a good use of time for sure. While the milk is still cold, add your 1 cup of Rooibos tea concentrate to it. Now, Rooibos means red for obvious reasons. I'm not quite sure what it will do. It might turn it a little bit of a different color. I'm not really sure. You'll stir it in. And then you'll slowly heat this milk to 85 degrees. While the milk is heating, let me tell you a little bit more about this recipe. Rooibos tea originates in South Africa, and so does the cheesemaker who shared this recipe with me. So meet Christian.
Hey guys, Christian here from Cape Town, South Africa, hoping you're well. Look, I'm a bit of a curd nerd. I love making cheese. I love eating cheese. I love the work that Lisa does with her videos. I think it's absolutely fantastic. Enjoy this one. I think it's going to be good. The cheese is well worth making. Okay, cheers. Keep well. Bye.
I'll tell you a little bit more about how we connected a little later on in the video while I'm stirring the curds. Once the milk has reached the target temperature, go ahead and turn off the heat. Take 1/2 teaspoon of mesophilic culture and sprinkle it to the top of the milk. Then take a pinch of lipase. Now, a pinch is a technical measurement term. It is 1/16 of a teaspoon. Sprinkle it to the top of the milk and let both ingredients rehydrate for 5 minutes. Then stir the culture and the lipase into the milk for about 30 seconds or until you think it's all the way through. Now I have here a 1/4 cup of non-chlorinated water, and I'm going to add 3/4 of a teaspoon of calcium chloride to it, so it dilutes it as I stir it into the milk. I think it helps for a more even distribution process. Stir for about 20 seconds. And now we'll do the same thing to the rennet. We'll take 3/4 of a teaspoon and add it to 1/4 cup of non-chlorinated water. pour it into the milk and stir it in for about 20 seconds. Remove the thermometer and cover the pot and let this stand for 40 minutes or longer until you get a clean break. Now it's time to check for a clean break. Just take the curd knife and cut a slit into the curd mass, pull it back, and the whey should seep back into the cut. And that's what's happening. So we are ready to cut this curd. Cut the curd into 1/2 pieces, vertically, then diagonally. Cover the curds and let them rest for 5 minutes. I want you to see this a minute. I reached into my cupboard for a pot and look what I found. Hello. More sanitizing. While the curds are healing, this is your opportunity to take 1 gallon of non-chlorinated water and heat it to 140 degrees. You're going to need it in a minute to wash the curds. Now it's time to wash the curds. Place a colander into the curds and take a measuring cup and take out about 4 cups or 10%, and then we're going to use the water to replace the whey. Then replace the whey with a 140 degree water. Your goal will be to get these curds up to 92 degrees. Now stir gently for 10 minutes. If you see any curds that are too large, you can break them with the side of your spoon. So, how did a cheesemaker from Boise, Idaho connect with a cheesemaker in Cape Town, South Africa? Social media, of course. I was reviewing my Instagram feed one morning and this picture came up and I thought, what? Tea-infused Gouda? That sounds interesting. So I decided to send him a message and ask him if I could video the recipe. And he replied with the recipe and greetings from the Southern Hemisphere and said he would be delighted. So that's the story. Now we'll remove the whey down to the level of the curd. This should take a few minutes. By now, your water should be cooled to about 112 degrees, and then you're going to use this water and replace the whey until the curds are at 98 degrees. If you overshoot the temperature of 98 degrees, it's no problem. Just add a little bit of cool water until you reach the new target temperature. Stir the curds for 20 minutes. And of course, YumYum is hoping for a stray curd or two. She lives for this moment. Let the cheese rest for another 10 minutes so that all the curds fall to the bottom of the pot. We're trying to create one big mass. Drain the curds into a fine mesh colander or a cheesecloth lined colander. you can break up the curds a little bit to help the whey release more. And remember earlier I mentioned that I wondered if the tea would alter the color of the curds, and it sure has. These curds are a little bit pink. Fun. Then take the chunks of curd and transfer them into a cheesecloth lined mold. I'm using a 3-pound mold, and that should be just about right because I used 3.5 gallons, and typically a gallon produces a pound of cheese or so. It depends on the cheese. Here's how I'm estimating the 20 pounds. 20 pounds is a light to medium press, and while I don't have a way to measure the actual poundage, I can estimate by watching the amount of whey coming out from the bottom. And in the beginning, this first press, and with every first press, really the goal is just to get most of the whey out and to get just a general form so that we can begin to create that rind before we press it for the next longer period, which is usually somewhere around 10 to 12 hours. So I'm utilizing these wing nuts to give me the pressure that I need. And since it's the first press, I already know that in 15 minutes or so, I'm going to come back and adjust these a little bit. But I want them tight to the point where it starts to become a little more difficult to turn, but not so tight that I press it too quickly. I'm really impressed with this cheese press that Vince built me because for a lot of reasons, but one of the reasons is I really have the ability to get a nice even top on the cheese. Sometimes I would get sort of a tilt, and that's not happening anymore with this press, so I'm pretty pleased with it. It's the 15-minute mark, so I'm just tightening these up a little bit. See how they're pretty loose? And that should increase the drainage, which it is. That's perfect. Remove the cheese from the mold. Oh, it is pink. This is awesome. Oh, I am so excited. Thank you, Christian, for this recipe. What fun. All right, then you're going to unwrap it and flip it over and press again at 30 pounds for 12 hours. Now it's time to brine the cheese. And as you can see, I just finished off trimming some of the edges. You don't have to do that if you want, but I wanted a little more of an even look. So I'm brining this cheese in an 18% brine solution, and I'll brine it for a total of 12 hours. You'll want to flip it at the 6-hour mark because, as you can see, the cheese is floating. So you can also place a follower on top. That'll help keep the cheese submerged. And that's it. We'll see you in 12 hours. You can brine this at room temperature. Well, it's the next morning, and I took my cheese out of the press, and I was planning to put it in the brine. And as I pulled off the cheesecloth, I was surprised. I thought this cheese was going to be pink, but it really is more orange. I think almost a salmon color. But it's really neat, kind of cool. I thought I'd show you this before I put it into the brine. Let the cheese air dry for 1 to 2 days or until it's completely dry to the touch. Flip it every 12 hours to make sure that both sides get dried evenly. Cover the cheese just to make sure that nothing unwanted gets in there, bugs or dust or, kitchen kitties. Now it's time to apply the tea leaf rub to the rind of the cheese. Remember the reserved tea bags from a couple of days ago? Well, we're going to use those now, and we're going to break them open. Next, you'll take a teaspoon of salt and add it to the tea leaves. And then you'll take 2 tablespoons of olive oil and pour it into the leaves. Now, I pasteurized this olive oil before I used it, so I took it to over 161 degrees for at least 15 seconds, because I try to do that with everything that could touch the cheese. If I can pasteurize it, I will. Go easy with this olive oil. Less is more. You can always add a little more later. And then just rub the tea leaves all the way into the cheese. Oh yeah, it's turning it a beautiful color. This is going to be gorgeous. Right, and then back to the drying rack for 2 days. Flip it every 12 hours. And then we will repeat this step for a total of 3 times. Once this cheese is dry to the touch, you can wax it or you can vacuum seal it. Then place it in the cave at 54 degrees for 6 weeks. Be sure to turn it once every day for the first week and then once every other day for the next 5 weeks. Well, that's the story of how 2 hobby cheesemakers from the Northern Hemisphere and the Southern Hemisphere became cheese friends. If you have a cheese you would like me to make, drop a note in the comments and I'll see what I can do. Thank you so much for watching. As always, we appreciate your support. Like and subscribe and share this video with your friends. And we will see you in the next episode.